Hi, welcome to our channel Good News. How concerned is the US about China? Beginning with how wise and composed the United States used to be is essential. Looking back, there was a notion that American progress was of a high caliber throughout the 1990s, which was more than 30 years ago. The term high-quality development refers to growth that is both optimum in terms of GDP growth, between 4% and 5%, and low in terms of inflation, about 2%. Most economists credit the internet economy for this sort of high-quality, American-style development. The deflating of the dot-com bubble in 2001 demonstrated how inaccurate this perspective was. Due to the widespread export of inexpensive Chinese goods, the United States was able to maintain low inflation during the period. In order to escape numerous financial crises, only the United States and Europe, which hates inflation the most, have ventured to print money at a rapid pace. At the time, China was plagued by high-priced imported factor commodities, primarily energy, and environmental pollution that was made worse by cost reduction. Additionally, China was exporting high-quality and low-cost goods that were no longer able to be cheap and had extremely slim profit margins. The United States, on the other hand, has power over the right to decide on international trade regulations as well as the right to receive and release the dollar. There are virtually little profit margins remaining for China. To create things, you need energy; to import energy, you need money; and to generate money, you must create things. When you purchase something on the global market, raw material costs will increase once again. The United States is not content as a result. Did he not want to use the end of the Cold War, when the United States ruled the world, and seize control of all oil leaders throughout the globe, when he entered Afghanistan and Iraq? In addition to using the money that the US has printed, China will also depend on the US's attitude if it wants to purchase oil. It is better for China to determine what to do with the money they earn. Let China work hard as their low-end workers, and they should have the last word on how much money they make. They will then be charged with environmental pollution and forced to enact a harsh carbon price in the future. Americans perceive China as being trapped in an unending circle from which there is no escape. However, the United States had no idea that China of today would have altered its anomalous development structure and understood the transition of both new and old kinetic energy. More than 120 nations across the world currently trade with China more than any other country. More and more nations are prepared to utilize the RMB in international settlements as a result of China's growing increase in its overall national power. The proportion of the renminbi in the IMF's currency basket keeps increasing. The advancement and use of 5G communication technology has hastened the digitalization and artificial intelligence-based empowerment of traditional industry. China's wind, solar, new generation hydropower, and new generation nuclear power are the world leaders in the fields of new energy and clean energy. From about 80% of the total power output in the past to 56% last year, traditional thermal power generation has reduced. The efficiency of burning coal has increased, lowering pollutants and carbon emissions. The amount of renewable energy, also known as green energy, will increase to 50% by the conclusion of the 14th five-year plan. It was already close to 20% last year. China will cease its reliance on foreign oil thanks to the rapid replacement of internal combustion engines with electric and hydrogen engines. All of these are necessary to understand that our own actions are our best guarantee of energy security. Maintain the red line of 1.8 billion mu of arable land, maintain control over the safety of food chips, seeds, raise the bar for crop planting, harvesting, and management through the use of artificial intelligence and satellite positioning, and enhance the ecological environment in the arid regions of northwest China through water conservation projects. Enhancing research on the impacts of genetic mutation, pests and diseases, and biological damage on crops, and the technique of cultivating crops in saline alkaline zones. All of things are done in an effort to secure their own food and safety. Originally, this planet was created by international cooperation and trade. Since the United States must upset this equilibrium and constrain China at its own expense, China must immediately rectify all of its shortfalls in order to prevent suffering losses due to the cutoff of supplies. Controlling the industrial chain and supply chain security firmly is necessary to fill up gaps and avoid outbreaks. The three fundamental security facets of China are also national: food security, energy security, industry, supply, and chain security. In addition to providing infrastructure, technologies, and commodities to the rest of the globe, China will eventually use energy storage technology to supply green energy. In reference to the green energy produced by solar and wind energy, a German economist once prophesied that Western China will become the Middle East of the globe. China is not only the most extensive industrial power in the world, but it is also on the verge of becoming one. China will lead the world in reducing carbon emissions by attaining the twin carbon targets in addition to having enormous industrial capacity. China combats corruption domestically and forbids interest groups from impeding productivity growth for the sake of regional interests. In addition, China's middle class will treble to 800 to 900 million people in the next 10 to 15 years, outnumbering both the whole population of Europe and the United States by almost 3 to 1. China respects the win-win concept when dealing with other nations and does not demand that they take its side. China and the United States are different in that other nations can only advance the United States' interests at the expense of their own, while other nations can support China's interests so long as they also advance their own. China must now independently achieve high-quality development. Since China has control over the three fundamental security issues outlined above, it can maintain stable growth of 4% to 5% while keeping inflation within a manageable range of 2%. This time, China has laid the groundwork for its own high-quality growth without depending on or becoming constrained by anyone. This entire situation was once a planned vision. This year's abrupt Russian-Ukrainian conflict has driven up both oil and food costs worldwide. Both industrialized and developing nations are essentially enmeshed in the quicksand of high inflation brought on by the food and energy crises. China's ability to keep ahead of global inflation is a result of its thorough planning for the three fundamental security issues. Of course, a robust military is required to ensure the success of this plan for sustained and healthy growth. The entire manufacturing level, which is sometimes referred to as the bloom of industry, is the foundation for a nation's military and industrial capabilities. China has expertise in a number of important fields, including hypersonic missiles, space technology, electromagnetic technology, laser and radar, supercomputing and artificial intelligence, near-space technology, unmanned equipment, and all of these other essential sectors. In front of everyone, walk. The U.S. military stock is under pressure as a result of China's military buildup. The United States currently faces China, much as the United States did with the United Kingdom in the past. Can the United States not feel worried in this situation? The United States tries its hardest to stop China's growth out of anxiety, but China cannot submit to this strategy. Looking back at every difficult procedure from the past, China has overcome several challenges and done all the necessary preparations. What do each of you think about this? Thanks for having your watching in this video. You can add your ideas or suggestions below. Please keep following our channel and like our videos.